Hello, and welcome to the FightNoise video blog. Welcome back, in fact, if you have indeed seen my humble video blog before. That's pretty unlikely, though, because it'd make you one of about 5 or 6 people on planet Earth. Moving right along, today we're going to be discussing who I believe to be the 3 most interesting prospects, 3 most interesting UFC middleweights not currently ranked in the top 10 in the UFC. First guy I want to start talking about is Clinton Hester, a gentleman who we first became aware of through the Ultimate Fighter show. Put on a few very impressive performances on that show. Was the top pick on that show, and though he didn't end up winning the actual show, it was a pretty talent-rich season of the show. And since the show, he has looked pretty darn impressive, racking up a couple wins and continuing to improve, continuing to grow his skill set. There is no question about the guy's natural athletic gifts. Incredibly fast, strong, explosive. He has all those innate tools that you can't teach or develop. And in addition to that, he appears to now have the willingness to put in the time, the effort to grow and develop his skill set and become a complete, well-rounded mixed martial artist. And we're seeing that now. And I think the results are going to continue to be more and more impressive. Coming off the recent victory over Dylan Andrews, another impressive middleweight prospect, another guy who I think has a bright future in the UFC. But Hester was the better man that night and appeared to be the one who had developed and grown the most as a mixed martial artist since their respective tenures on The Ultimate Fighter. After this, going forward, I'd love to see Hester matched up with, I have it written down here somewhere, oh, Hester, who shall you be fighting? Hester, I'm going to say, should fight CB Dalloway. I think would be a good matchup for Clinton Hester. Very interesting stylistic matchup. It'd be good to see him against a really good wrestler, which Dalloway has, the really good wrestling. It'd also be nice to see him against someone with a lot more octagon experience and push him a little bit and force him to display continued improvement in his octagon generalship, which I feel like we've seen from him, and that's the kind of, I think, pressure that he needs if he's going to continue to move towards being ranked in the top 10, respectively. Next up is a guy who I've been excited about since his early fights in Strikeforce, and I'm still excited about, and I think is still a prospect to watch, and someone who's going to be very, very relevant in the UFC in the not-too-distant future. Lorenz Larkin, another very interesting prospect, had a couple tough fights right off the bat in the UFC. First one against Francis Carmon, who currently is ranked in the top 10, I think 7th or 8th or something like that. So Carmon certainly no slouch. What Lorenz Larkin brings to the table is some extremely dynamic, well-rounded, and unorthodox striking. What he has been developing since it became clear that he had such great striking is some really good takedown defense, which was on the display in the first round against Carmon. Carmon wasn't able to take him down. Carmon went on to win a decision, but it was a close fight. And Larkin showed some real improvements in his takedown defense and his grappling. If he can continue to grow that defense and force guys to stand with him, he's going to be a very tough matchup for anyone in that weight class. He reminds me actually a lot of Lyoto Machida, stylistically. Really good in and out movement, great footwork, very explosive, prefers over combinations, prefers to land the perfect single strike, and now is developing some really good takedown defense, which Machida is also famous for. So if he can continue on that path, I think that would be sort of a great stylistic model for him to aspire to, and he certainly is going to do some impressive things if he can keep moving in that direction. I think we could be seeing him in the top 10 in the not too distant future. I'd love to see him up next against Mark Munoz. I think that would be a great challenge for him. A really fun fight. Great stylistic matchup. Munoz, currently ranked in the top 10. It's a big step up in competition for Lorenz Larkin, but Munoz is coming off a pretty devastating loss. So it might make sense to make that fight. I certainly think it'd be a fun matchup, and it would really force Larkin to display how far he's come in terms of takedown defense and dealing with really skilled wrestlers. Now, moving on to the third and final pick, I did save the best for last, or at least my favorite for last. Yoel Romero, who I have been kind of blown away by, frankly, since he started in the UFC. He got a real late start in the sport. He's about 36, 37, something like that. But the guy brings with him about as impressive a wrestling pedigree as any fighter in the UFC. He won a silver medal in the 2000 Olympics for Cuba, where he's from, and doesn't get much better than that unless you're the gold medalist. So that's about as high level of wrestling as one can bring into the octagon. What's equally impressive is how rapidly his striking seems to have developed for a guy who, a few years ago, I don't think had any experience with it whatsoever. His striking has become not only explosive and he has power and all that, he has fluidity in his striking, which is something you don't always see right off the bat from guys transitioning from wrestling to MMA who are trying to learn the striking game, which has a little bit more of a fluid pace to it than grappling or wrestling does, and a little bit more of a fast twitch endeavor as opposed to wrestling, which is more of a muscle endurance plays a larger role. That's a generalization, but nonetheless, it's very impressive that a guy with his wrestling skill and his wrestling ability can come in and strike like that and be that effective. And on top of that, he's got power. He appears to have genuine knockout power. I think that if this guy can continue to round out his game and develop his striking even further, he already has the wrestling. If he can maybe add some submissions and perhaps use his wrestling offensively as well, I mean, I don't see any reason why this guy couldn't be challenging for a title in the not-too-distant future. I think he has that ability and is quite possibly one of the best pure athletes that we have ever seen in the UFC. Again, the one thing against him, the one strike against him, he's getting a late start in the sport. But based on how far he's come this quickly, I'm convinced it's not too late. And this is a guy who we're not only going to see in the top 10 in coming years, but who could very well be challenging for a title in the not too distant future. Well, that'll wrap it up for today. I appreciate you stopping by and listening to my ramblings about all these various things, and join me next time. I'm sure it'll be hopefully fun next time. We'll see. I don't know. But these three middleweight contenders, I'm excited about them. You should be excited about them. Keep an eye on them, especially Yoel Romero, and we'll be seeing you next time on the FightNoise video blog. Thanks for listening.